Now, what you will discover a lot of in building a walk cycle is pendulums. So if I look here, is this the curve? Is this the one? There we go. What you'll see is a lot of movements where you will look at that and say, well, there's a rotate Y and there's a rotate Z, right? And they're kind of doing similar things, but not exactly. But what you'll find as a general rule is this. In linear, you'll look at them as V's. If you put this into spline, what you'll see are kind of bell curves, just like the pendulum. So that means I'm at one extreme and then I'm going through a zero and then to another extreme and then back up. So I'm turning to the left, turning to the right. That's a pendulum, right? We already looked at that in term one. So that's a pattern that you're going to see a lot of. But the difference is that a pendulum acts through gravity. Does our hip movements act only with gravity, or are there other parts of our body that are causing things to move, like muscles? So muscles behave differently than gravity, right? So muscles tend to give a pattern that's more like push, pull, push, pull. They fire and relax. One another set fires. So they're not very even. So most of the time when you start building a walk cycle, it will tend to feel really smooth because the pendulum, it'll feel like you're rocking back and forth a little too smoothly. So what we usually do is we'll start playing around with this and saying, well, you know what, I really don't want to have a perfect pendulum. I will probably want to have this behave a little bit different. I'm thinking about this where your hip is turning back and forth. What happens is that your foot plants, right? And that's the friction. Then your body pulls, right? So you're literally grabbing the ground and then pulling, 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 right? So that's what your foot is doing to yank your body forward. So that means it's a more aggressive acceleration. So what I would look at here is, well, what I would probably do is I'd maybe do a bit of an ease out. So I might be like, okay, I'll barely move. And then here, I'm going to really push. I'm going to accelerate really quickly, push. And then everything that I do on this side, I have to do on the other side. So if I look at here and say, okay, that's 2 frames later, then I go here, 2 frames later, and this number have to be the same, but I have to flip the sign. So I copy here, go there, paste, oops, paste, but I have to flip, didn't copy. Copy, negative, paste, there. And then this one and this one, it's the same thing. I just got to flip the sign, copy, paste, flip the sign. So you notice how the hip now, it doesn't feel even. It's got a little bit more kick to it. Push, pull, push, pull. That's a really important thing to get in here, that it starts to feel more organic. If I just undo that, and again, a nice trick is if I go to view, buffer curves, where are they? Buffer, 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 show buffer curves. And then you take a picture. So you click on this button here, right there, which is show like buffer curve snapshot. I click on that button, it takes a snapshot, and then I'll go delete everything except for the extremes. So I'm left with just the pendulum. And then what I can do is I can go back and forth between these. So I can hit play, right? And look at the hip, right? And just how evenly it's moving back and forth. And then I can use this button to swap. And if the rig plays back in real time, I can just literally go between version 1 and version 2 and see if I'm pushing it in the right direction. And I can see, you know, how much that's going to make the hip kind of do the little salsa move, how quick that's going to abruptly change. So the more I jack these up and down towards the extremes, the closer, hopefully, I'm going to get to something that feels a little more interesting. Right? So it's just not so smooth. And I can also experiment. If I want to, I could take this whole curve. And remember, I was showing you times equals -1. It's going to make everything twice as big. Sorry, times equals 2. So now I get more rotation. Right? So I can start playing around really early, even though I haven't finished the whole formula yet, just to see, well, how's everything working? Have I got the main pieces in? And a lot of times I'll work with stuff that's really goofy looking just so I can see it. Because sometimes the idea is to be subtle, but I can't see subtle. I can see goofy. So I can see something that's really extreme. And then I'll go and scale it down and say, okay, it's the right idea. It's looking more interesting. It's got some more life to it, but I really have to find a way to kind of tone it down. Now it just feels too sassy. So, okay, no problem. Once I have it, I can say, okay, times equals, I don't know, 0.5. And it's still there, but just now it's way more subtle.